Hey everybody, welcome to day 3 of the Unapologetic Eating interview series. We're going to be on here shortly with Lindley Ashleen. Okay. Hi people joining. Hi everybody. Hey Joni. If you are joining us, feel free to say hi. Let us know where you're joining in from today. We're gonna get Lindley on here in just a minute. Hi. Hi, Mom. Hey y'all. Okay. From the UK. Hi, Vanessa. People from all over today. Hi, Lindley. Hey. How are you?
Good. I love that your mom is here. Hi, Alyssa's mom.
Yeah, she's so supportive. She's been every day, I think, this week so far.
Oh, I love it. I love that support.
Okay, so as people are still joining us, but we can get started. So welcome to day 3 of the Unapologetic Eating interview series. I'm doing this series over the 2 weeks leading up to my book launch on February 9th. And just really wanted to bring together people who I really respect and admire and have learned so much from over the years and talk to them about what being unapologetic means to them and the impact it's had in their life. So today I have Lindley Ashleen. Did I say your last name correctly?
It's Ashline. It's exactly like it's spelled. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Ashline. This is so funny. I feel like I'm doing this every day because you know when like just in your head you see the name and you say it like a certain way.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Lindley, for joining me today. I've been following your work for years now, first from your body liberation photos that you've had. And then, fun fact, Lindley actually worked with me. I hired her as an equity consultant on my book. So she has, seen the back end of that and worked with me last year on that. And I just really appreciate everything that you share and all of your expertise. But for people watching who may not be as familiar with you or your work, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so this is a really exciting opportunity to talk about being unapologetic because everything that I currently do has stemmed from being increasingly unapologetic in my own life. So this is the topic is so cool. But my name is Lindley, Lindley, Ashline, and I use she, her pronouns. I live outside Seattle, Washington, and I do a little bit of a lot of things. I'm a professional photographer. I do in non-COVID-19 times. I do portrait, boudoir, small business photography, small business branding. I also do stock photos under Body Liberation Stock, and I'll tell you where you can find all of this in one place. But I do body positive and fat positive stock photography as well. We have a site where I'm the primary contributor because it's my baby, but I also have some other illustrators and photographers who also contribute to the site and get paid for their work. I have a shop called the Body Love Shop that is a combination of curated things from other stores where it's all fat positive products and artwork brought together, and then some things that I carry in stock physically that I send here from my home as well. And then let's see what else. I do help at every size consulting and writing. And every week I send out what I call the Body Liberation Guide. And it's a combination of a news update with what's going on in the health at every size and body positive and fat activism worlds. But I also include something that I've written every week. And that has been a really fun challenge too, because it means that every week I need to sit down and write something original. And that has pushed me so hard and so far forward in my own thought work and my own activism. So that has been really cool. And people really love it because it's something original and new every week. And you can find all of this, all these different threads are all at bodyliberationphotos.com.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad you shared about the newsletter because I was going to give a shout out to that as well because I mean, I probably, like many people, get so many email newsletters, but seriously, yours is one that I always read, like every week. And I don't know if I can say that about, honestly, like anyone else's newsletter because it always just has, I mean, it's this like corner of the internet that even with like being in this community, I'm not seeing all of these things. And you just kind of put it all together. And yeah, highly recommend that. So, like Lindley said, that's bodyliberationphotos.com.
Hmm.
I also wanted to, before we get into the unapologetic more, on your website, you talk about how do this photography and you really love the photography because it gives you a chance to, I actually like wrote it down specifically, people who don't see bodies like theirs represented anywhere else get to reclaim their self-image. Can you just talk a little bit more about why it's so important for people to see themselves represented?
Yeah, and this applies to a lot of types of bodies that we don't see regularly in magazines. And this can include people with visible disabilities, people with limb differences, people who use mobility devices. I specifically focus, although of course I love to represent all kinds of underrepresented bodies, but my specific focus is on large and very large bodies. And so when you see me using the word fat, I'm using it as a neutral descriptor. I'm not using that as an insult or being self-deprecating or whatever. It's just like I might say if I worked with very tall people specifically, I might say I work with tall people. So I work with fat folks, and that is just entirely neutral because a lot of us have reclaimed that term. So we don't mean anything negative by it. It's just those are the bodies that we live in. So I work mostly with fat folks, and we just don't see ourselves. I'm actually going to pick on Ashley Graham here for a second, who I'm sure she's a lovely person. I don't know her personally, but if you look at Ashley Graham, who is a plus size model, she's beautiful, she's lovely, and she's very body positive as far as I have seen her speak, but she is held forth as being like a marketing campaign will include Ashley and then we're inclusive. We now have all kinds of bodies. And these are my sarcasm hands. and what that means is that people in bodies like mine, I identify as someone who is a large fat person. I wear a 26, 28, 30 and Lane Bryant sizes. I am certainly not at the fattest end of the body spectrum, but I am excluded from a lot of public life and infrastructure because of my body size. And I don't see people like me in the media. I don't see people bigger than me in the media. There might be like one. Velvet Demore, the fashion model, who is also wonderful as far as I know. She is significantly fat. And every once in a while, a marketing campaign or a company will pull her and put her, and she is about my size. They will pull her and put her in a marketing campaign, and it's startling because she is so much larger. She's like twice Ashley Graham's size, if not more. And when you see that very rare instance, you go, oh my God, that person looks like me. My body is worthy of being seen too. My body is valid. And that is sort of underlying all the representation that I am working on because we don't see ourselves. And there are people, I've heard from people who will go to my stock photo site, which is there at bodyliberationphotos.com, but it's got its own URL as well. People will go to the stock photo section and they'll just browse just to see bodies that look like theirs.
Yeah.
I mean, they're essentially going to and it would be like going to Getty or iStock Photo or any of the big competitors in stock photos. You just don't see. And if you're not familiar with stock photos, those are photos that get used in other companies' marketing, basically. So when you don't have big bodies in the stock photo collections, you don't see them used elsewhere because they're not available. And so it becomes this world where all we see is thin bodies, or maybe a medium-sized body that gets used as representation. And so seeing bodies that look like yours, not half your size, but positioned as being inclusive. Bodies that look like yours, that have the same rolls and the same folds and the same curves and the same size, just because what we see, Emily Nagoski in her book, Come As You Are, has some really fantastic things to say about seeing people like you, because she said something like, seeing people like you is, it shows us what's acceptable and what's achievable for people like you.
Yeah.
And there are very few people out there who are showing people of my size and bigger that they can be visible too. And it's just mind blowing for when you finally see a bunch of people that look like you and go, oh my God, they're amazing and gorgeous and beautiful and valid.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, because yeah, the images, and I know this was like a wake up I had as a thin person. Like, I had never thought about a thin person, a white person, you know, able-bodied. I had never thought about the fact about this, because when I look at TV and advertisements, like, I see people that look like me, but the implicit and sometimes explicit message that sends, like what you're saying, is it sends this implicit message of like what bodies are acceptable and what ones like aren't in our society. And yeah, I know that, you know, when in working with clients, that is like a huge shift once they start, because well, we can't like completely curate everything we're intaking, certainly our own like personal social media feeds. And when they start following people with, you know, diverse body sizes and all these different things, it just is like, oh yeah, like this is real life. Like, all bodies exist. You know, what we see in the media and in the news is like the tiniest percentage of what the bodies in this world actually look like. And so yeah, your work with that is so amazing, just to like bring that and have these, like you said, these stock images when they're writing news articles or, you know, blogs, like just having the ability to have people use those different size bodies.
Yeah, and even things like there's actually a huge demand right now that as soon as it is safe to do multi-person photo shoots again, that I really want to start working on is romance novels, of all things. There are so many newer romance novels out there with heroines and heroes in larger body sizes, and there's no photos for people to use for the covers. So you have all these amazing romance novels of various kinds out there with really thin people on the cover, when that doesn't actually reflect the characters, because there is nothing. Those options do not exist.
Don't exist.
and yeah, I know that romance novels seem like a really petty or silly thing to worry about, but it's just one of the many. Like, if you want to get more serious, there do not exist reliable, non-shaming medical photos. And by reliable, I mean like a large collection where like people can go and find various things that they need. Of medical, non-shaming medical photos, of healthcare photos to use that have people in fat bodies, either as the healthcare provider or the patient. It just doesn't exist. So that's on my list too.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. So, okay, switching gears a little bit, but I know you mentioned that this is kind of, you know, plays into a lot of the work that you do. I would love to hear, you know, from your perspective, what being unapologetic, like in your life, like what that means and what that has like kind of shifted for you.
Yeah, I know. In Maya and Alyssa's preparation for this talk, we talked about talking about unapologetic in both eating and living. And for me, very short version, I grew up without a TV. I was very isolated, and I didn't have exposure to a lot of the diet culture messages that a lot of other people grew up with. So for me, getting to a point where I could eat unapologetically was and sort of reject dieting and diet culture. It's a process, like it is for everybody, but for me it was pretty easy. But I also live with an anxiety disorder, and so for me, living unapologetically has been the big struggle, and one that I'm making great progress in. But that has been just living unapologetically, doing and being the things that are authentic for me. And because when you've been speaking about body image and about fat acceptance for a few years, you and people run across you, they're like, how did you even get to this point? You're so brave, you're so bold, you're so like you're like this capital A activist, and I can never do that. And part of that has been that process of just being unapologetic, and also part of that is privilege. And I always point this out because I do run my own business. I have the ability to speak about pretty much whatever I want. I don't have an employer who will fire me. I mean, my cat threatens sometimes, but she hasn't actually fired me yet, like, and I have a financial safety net. I need to be very honest about that. My livelihood, I'm not going to lose my home if
Yeah.
if somebody's ticked off about what I say. I mean, that's not really a thing. So I have to be very honest about that too. I have white privilege. I have cisgender privilege and straight privilege, and I am in a marginalized body, but I still have many privileges. But beyond that too, and those things have supported me in being unapologetic. But it's just been this process of building these layers. Because first it was, I had been working a series of corporate jobs, and I was just increasingly miserable. And I just finally said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done apologizing for potentially being on the autism spectrum and having certain sensory needs while I'm working. I'm done apologizing for that. I'm done apologizing for being myself. I'm done apologizing for needing work that is stimulating and not toxic. And so I started my own business and I quit my day job. And then I was going to be a body positive boudoir photographer. That was my original goal. And I still do that, among many other things now. But I was very tentative about it. I was very sort of I'm knocking my headset off. Sweetly body positive in a way that was very wishy-washy, because I was afraid to say fat bodies are awesome. I was afraid to say the word fat, like in a business context. Like I was afraid to say I work with fat people. I was afraid to say, these are the bodies that deserve representation, and so that's who I work with. And so I did a lot of very wishy-washy stuff where I used a lot of euphemisms, and I did a lot of, all bodies are good, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't authentic for me. And for me, being unapologetic required me to get angry. Because I started doing this, and the more that I started getting into the body positive world and the fat positive world, the more I saw how fat folks are underrepresented and mistreated. And I got mad. And so it turned out that for me, being unapologetic and authentic required more than just being a body positive photographer. I had to do more. I had to start speaking out about body image and about fat acceptance and about body acceptance and about power, and discrimination and oppression. For me, it required that.
Yeah.
And the less apologetic I got about that, the more powerful my voice got. And the more practiced I got at it, because that's hard. I mean, I get trolled. I've gotten death wishes. Because I have some relative privileges, I also don't experience as much harassment as some people who are in larger bodies or in black bodies or whatever. But like, I've gotten doxxed already, like, the world is not kind to fat people who speak about the humanity of fat people. But that's what it required for me to be unapologetic. Yeah. And so I have developed a strong support network. I have a great therapist. And, for me, being unapologetic has also required me to develop the self-care and the community care mechanisms to support me in that. And that's really important.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because, yeah, it's so difficult to, I think for most people to, like, divest from this, like, mainstream diet culture, the, like, anti-fat beliefs, this idea of, like, well, I have to look a certain way to be accepted and be valuable and be loved. Like, it's hard enough to do that without having some kind of support network. I know a lot of people will be like, okay, I'm the only one in my life that's, like, not trying to get smaller, not trying to shrink myself. And so thank you for bringing that up, of just that importance of finding community. Yay for therapists as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, finding community and having, that kind of coping in place. I also love how you said, being unapologetic for you meant getting angry. And, I think for those of us who've been socialized as women, that's generally something we're taught, like, not to be. Like, it's not okay to be, you want to be like nice. And like, I know for me, it's like, oh, I don't like confrontation. And it's not because I don't like it, right? Inherently, it's like this was taught to me that like in a variety of ways, that like confrontation was bad, being angry was bad. And I know, like you said, as white women, we don't have that nearly as bad as black people, and black women in particular get that like the angry black women trope all the time, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for mentioning that too, because I think sometimes people have this anger and like aren't really sure how to feel about that. But I love that you brought up like that was part of the process for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Southern. I was raised to be a sweet Southern white lady who, like we don't do angry, we do passive aggressive,
Yeah.
and so I had to give myself permission and to stop apologizing for being angry, and learn to. And the thing is that anger can go in all sorts of directions, and there are unproductive and toxic uses of anger as well. But for me, like a few months ago, I started calling my anger a sacred flame because
Mm.
it has sustained me through not only being, like I said, I've been doxxed, I've been harassed, and not only has sustained me through that, because I don't deserve that for saying that I deserve a seat on an airplane. The things that I'm saying are not actually in the grand context of humanity. I'm
Right.
not actually particularly radical.
Right.
um,
Right.
I'm saying that just I deserve health care. I deserve all the things that people in bodies that are more socially acceptable than mine deserve. That is not actually all that radical. But it has sustained me through being mistreated for saying those things. But also through seeing the mistreatment that people in bodies like mine get, because when you develop networks of people who are marginalized in the same way that you are, in my case, groups, Facebook groups full of fat folks, you hear a lot of horror stories, and it's hard. And I could choose to take that and shrink into it and say nothing is ever going to change. The situation is so bad. But I got angry, and I stopped apologizing for being angry, and that drives a lot of my writing. That drives a lot of my activism work. And it also keeps me from just shrinking and melting under being a very, very, very minor public figure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. My last question for you is, thinking about the people watching, thinking about people who are in this journey of like working towards body liberation, working towards being unapologetic and all these different areas of their lives, what like piece of advice, I'm sure you have many, but like what piece of advice would you share with those people?
I think one of the situations that I see most often in people who are learning to be unapologetic, particularly around their eating or their body size or not investing in diet culture anymore and being unapologetic about that, is isolation. You're the only one in your office who doesn't want to talk about how, the bagels are so full of carbs. I can only have a third of a bagel today. You're the only one who doesn't participate in that. You're the only one who at the family Thanksgiving table doesn't want to join in the diet talk. You're the only one of your friends who's not dieting. And that's a really tough position to be in, because diet culture is not just, it's awful and it's toxic, but it's also a bonding ritual. It's part of how we bond with each other socially. And replacing that is hard. Losing out on that is hard. And I say this from my own life too. I'm the only one in my biological family who's not dieting usually. So seek community. Find people who with bodies like yours on Instagram. Find people who are unapologetic in the way that resonates with you. Find Facebook groups. There are so many resources. In non-COVID times, there are lots of local fat positive or body positive community groups who go out and do stuff together. There are, depending on where you live, there might be clothing swaps where you can find clothing in your size and find community, bond over that with some people. So seek out those connection points. Seek out community that is good for you. that doesn't make you feel bad about your body or yourself. And that learning to be unapologetic in that environment and then taking that out into the wider world is way easier than being isolated and learning to be unapologetic all on your own.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think, do you still have that post up on your website that details the list of like support groups and Facebook groups?
I do. I do. If you go to bodyliberationphotos.com and in the search, click the search button at the top of the page and type in HAES groups, HAES groups, it will come up. I'm actually going to be moving that to a Patreon reward soon behind my Patreon wall, simply because some trolls have been using that as like a list of targets, and that's not okay. But as of right now, I think I'm moving that in a few weeks. And then it will be available on my Patreon, which is linked from my website. And it'll be available to everybody on the Patreon. I just wanted to put it behind a little bit of a wall so that it wasn't out in the public. But yeah, you can find that at HAES Groups on my website, and my Patreon starts at $1 a month, so that is not particularly taxing to access.
Totally accessible. Great. Thank you so much, Lindley. I feel like there was so much more I wanted to talk to you about. So we're going to just have to do this again.
Yeah,
Thank you again so much for taking the time out of your day and for sharing with us. For those of you who are watching, this is day 3. So we have, let me do math, 9 more days left. 9 more days? Yeah, 9 more days left of the interview series. And we also have a book launch party happening on February 9th. Which is going to be super fun, and I'm going to be in conversation with a few other people around similar topics, and we're going to have a DJ dance party, which I'm super excited about. So links to the rest of the Instagram Live series, as well as the book launch, are in my bio. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you again, Lindley, for being here with me. Hope you all.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, take care. Bye, everybody.